You look like your head fell on the cheese dip back in 1957. You're okay. You see, I take these glasses off. She looks like a regular person, doesn't she, huh? Put them back on, formaldehyde face.
You get out or I call the cops.
Call the cops? You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to episode 2 of Camel Clutch Cinema. This is the show where we review movies that either have wrestlers in them or wrestling in them. And today we're going to be talking about They Live. I'm here, as always, with Craig Cohen. Craig, how you doing?
I'm all right, Guy. I'm actually, even though it's 100-plus degrees today here in beautiful New Jersey, I am wearing my flannel shirt.
Yes. Yes. You need a flannel shirt with your big sleeping bag on your back.
I am ready.
Nice and warm. I was going to bring some bubble gum, but I was literally all out of bubble gum.
Well, that's pretty fitting.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about this film. This film has a huge cult following, I guess, for a handful of reasons. John Carpenter being one as the director, and I think Roddy Piper, obviously didn't have a huge movie career, but I guess people that like him really latch on to this part.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely.
When did you see this for the first time?
I can't imagine that I saw it in theaters, but it had to be right around probably when it came out on home video, I'd say. So, I don't know. In those days, it took, stuff like a year to get to home video, probably?
Yeah, probably. I saw it on home video. My brother worked at a video store. I saw it, the day it came out. And I got a big, oversized version of the VHS cassette box to hang on my wall. It was like a little point-of-purchase display item.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but I didn't see it in theaters either. How did it do in theaters?
It actually it came out in November of 1988. And opening weekend, it was number one. It debuted at number one, grossing over $4 million. And beating out another film opening that weekend, the U2 documentary Rattle and Hum. Okay. The Accused was also in theaters. Halloween 4, Mystic Pizza, and Punchline. It was
a rather weak week. What happened the next week?
It was dethroned by Child's Play, and it also finished behind two other films. So it finished fourth that weekend, finishing behind Iron Eagle 2 and Ernest Saves Christmas.
Oh, man, that's a classic.
And by December, it was pretty much done and had a final domestic gross of about $13 million, and it ended up being John Carpenter's 11th highest grossing film. So came out of the gate with a bang and then kind of petered out. And I guess that's pretty much what you'd expect from films that go on to achieve cult-like status.
Let me do a plot summary here. Roddy Piper plays a drifter, and I know that his character has a name in the credits, and we'll get into why that was, but throughout the movie, they never call him by name, so I'm going to call him Roddy Piper throughout the plot summary. So Roddy Piper arrives in L.A., finds work at a construction site. He needs a place to sleep, so Piper's taken to a shanty town by a fellow construction worker, Frank Armitage, who's played by Keith David. At the shanty town, there's nice people, good food, but something is amiss. As Piper watches an outdoor TV set, the signal's constantly hijacked by a man speaking of a conspiracy by the wealthy. Piper notices that the nearby church is not what it seems to be. There's no parishioners and lots of sunglasses. After a late-night raid destroys the shantytown, Piper tries on the sunglasses and for the first time truly sees the world around him. Advertising and media are all commands to obey and submit, and many of the people he sees on the street are not people at all. The sunglasses expose them as aliens. Even the president is an alien. After confronting an alien woman at a grocery, Piper realizes that the aliens can communicate through the wristwatches. Aliens disguised as police officers attempt to apprehend Piper, but he shoots them and then goes on a shooting spree at a bank before taking a human hostage. His hostage is Cable 54 employee Holly Thompson. Piper has her drive him to her home where he attempts to convince her of the conspiracy, but she knocks him out the window. Piper meets up with Frank, who doesn't want anything to do with him since he's a wanted killer. So they have an Iron Man match in an alley where Frank refuses to put the glasses on. But eventually Piper gets him to look through the glasses and see the world around him as Piper now sees it through his sunglasses. Together they attend a resistance meeting where Piper sees Holly again. Holly's now a believer, and they make amends before the police arrive and a shootout ensues. Piper and Frank use an alien teleporter to infiltrate the alien network of underground tunnels. There they find out that many humans have joined the alien cause. Piper and Frank find Holly as the TV station it's the big ending at the TV station. They run into Holly there, and he attempts to save her, but she kills Frank, tries to stop Piper. He shoots her, destroys the alien broadcaster on the roof before being killed himself. But his death was not in vain. The broadcaster is now destroyed, and all humans can now see the aliens for what they truly are, and we roll credits. So what do you think of this movie, Craig? I really like this film.
Yeah. Actually, I'm actually a pretty big John Carpenter fan, so I'm slightly biased here. But this was one of the John Carpenter movies that I hadn't seen in quite a few years. I had to dig it up to watch it, and it's good. It's good. It's a nice tight movie, and I think it works.
It'll be on Blu-ray in a couple months. They actually announced that after we decided to do this.
That's pretty fortuitous.
I watched it on VHS cassette.
Nice.
And I have the cassette here, and it's got like the picture of Piper's eyeball with the glasses below him, and it says, "You see them on the street, you watch them on TV, you think that they're people just like you. You're wrong. Dead wrong. They live." So, interesting movie, interesting title. The title does show up during the film. I guess we'll mention that when we come to that. Roddy Piper was one of my favorite wrestlers ever. Still is.
Yeah.
And at this time, he had retired after WrestleMania 3, which would have been 1987. The big one at Pontiac Silverdome.
Yeah.
And he went into Hollywood, and he worked a little bit. He did, I think Hell Comes to Frogtown was right before this. He did a few other films before this, and then he did a few after this, and then he came back to wrestling maybe 2-3 years after this.
Yeah, which is surprising because one thing you get when you watch this movie, and the funny thing is, I sat down and watched the trailer, and you see John Carpenter, and you think, wow, why didn't he get Kurt Russell? But as soon as Piper walks on screen, there wasn't a moment since then where I didn't think that the movie belonged to Piper.
Yeah. He walks on screen to the never-ending sound of dun, 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 dun. I mean, I didn't think this was going to end. As I'm watching it, I'm thinking, wait, does this go on through the whole movie? Was this the entire score? Was this just they had a 1.5-minute loop just going on forever? Yeah, we see him arrive in the town. Let's jump right into a scene breakdown, then we'll talk about wrestling at this time. Mm-hmm. He arrives in L.A. His name is Nada, according to the closing credits, which is a reference to the book, or the short story this is based on, which I think appeared in like a science fiction magazine. Yeah,
in the 1960s.
Yeah, have you got a chance to read this?
I did read the story, and it's very short, and basically has the structure for what the movie actually turned out to be, but there's quite a few differences. So it looks like they brought a lot of new stuff to the table for the movie.
Yeah, you could really, I would say that you could read this in a 1.5 minutes. But
yeah, it was a quick read.
Yeah, a very short read. But you could also have done this movie and not credited this, and I can't imagine there'd be anybody that would sense the connection, because while the story is got a lot of similarities, it's not. This by no means is what happens. There's no put the glasses on fight scene. There's, the aliens are like reptiles, and I believe after he kills them, they turn back into aliens.
Sure. Yeah. No, I definitely hear what you're saying.
He gets a call at the beginning of the short story, and they say, you're gonna. Well, actually, the short story begins. He's at a magic show, and they're hypnotizing people.
Yeah, he was at a theater of some kind,
and so he is hypnotized, and he can now see the aliens for what they are when he came out of hypnosis. And so he gets a call, and they say, you're going to die tomorrow. You're going to have a heart attack at 8. And the whole story goes through a very condensed version of what happens in the film. A lot of, finding out that they're aliens, killing the aliens. And then it ends with him basically doing what Piper does at the end of this movie. And then he dies at the time that they said he was going to die. Mm-hmm. A lot of people look for deeper meanings in this movie, by the way, I should say. I looked online. There's tons of people that are so deep into this. They're like, it's about LSD. It's about this. It's about this political party. It's about, poverty. It's about, there's all kinds of people, people read all kinds of things into it that maybe are there or maybe aren't there.
Sure. And that's actually one of the coolest things I think about movies is people can really, dig down into them if they want to. Knowing the kind of filmmaker that John Carpenter is, though, I think most of the time he's just looking to just entertain people. He came from a background where he went to film school and learned how to be a filmmaker. Not to say that he's not an artist, but he's very much, a workman when it comes to making movies. So I think he just wanted to make a movie that entertained people. And if you want to read more into it, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's run through it. So he arrives in L.A. He's got his big backpack on his back. He goes to this employment agency because he wants to get a job, and he talks to this lady who couldn't be overacting to a greater degree.
And was she getting ready to go to a ball or something?
It's an old lady, well-dressed.
Yeah.
And he's like, they don't have a lot of jobs anymore where I come from. And she goes, pfft, and rolls her eyes in a fashion that I guess they were like, look, people are going to watch this on home video one day, and TVs are really small, here in the late 80s. So you got to make those gestures real big so everybody can see you roll your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she sort of lets him, go through his, his spiel, and then says, I'm sorry, we have nothing for you, without really knowing what he does.
Yeah. He's just like, the bank's dried up and there's no more jobs. And she's like, okay, gotcha. Roll my eyes. We've got nothing for you.
It feels like she could have saved him some time as soon as she walked in and, with his flannel shirt and said, nah, I got nothing for you.
Then he goes out. We get the first glimpse of the conspiracy plot. We see the blind preacher who shows up throughout the film, and he's standing on a corner, throwing out his spiel, his opinion, his conspiracies, telling everybody this. Piper sees it and keeps going.
Yeah, this was one of those moments where I really wished that, and we talked about this on the last episode, where if you have one wrestler, you can have dozens of wrestlers. Yes. And, we saw the Reverend Slick on this, episode 1000 of Raw, and I couldn't help but think he would have been great for this role.
Oh, my goodness. Now the movie's ruined. He would have been great. Piper moves on. He sleeps in an alley, watches TV through a window. The old person rocking in the chair had that TV cranked so Piper could hear it loud and clear.
Yeah.
He gets his construction job, and did you notice who he got the job from?
I did not.
It was Norman Alden, who was Lou in Back to the Future. He was the tab, can't give you a tab in the short or something.
Pepsi free.
Yes, and he passed away 2-3 days ago.
Oh, right. I remember reading that. Yeah, yes, I didn't make that connection.
It was Lou. I was stunned. I actually watched this the day he died, and I heard he died, and I said, my God, that guy was still alive. And he was in his late 80s, which shocked me because I thought he was in his late 80s in Back to the Future.
Yeah. Did you notice in this scene when Piper asked for the job and the guy says, well, this is a union job, and then Piper looks at a group of guys goofing off or whatever and then says, well, can you take me to the shop steward? Now, for me, did that seem like Piper was saying this isn't a union job and I'm seeing that, or did I miss something?
Yeah, it's a good question. I kind of, now that you're mentioning it, I kind of thought that may play in later, and it never did.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe there's some subtle message about unions in there that I don't, I didn't pick up. Maybe John Carpenter's not fond of them.
Yeah, because when they panned to the guys goofing off, I was like, oh, it's not a union job, and the guy's just, giving him a hard time. But So I was more just checking to make sure that I didn't miss something that was obvious.
Yeah, no, it's an odd moment, and it really is just about Norman Alden's only moment in the film. He shows up at the end of Piper's day after we get to see Piper without his shirt for a few minutes, and he tells him he can't sleep there, so Piper has to follow Frank. And it's this weird scene where Frank's like, "You want to come with me?" And Piper's like, "Oh, let me do that eye roll I learned from the old lady at the unemployment office." He's like, "I'm Shantytown." And then he follows them, and they have their whole exchange about, "I don't go any place before I see where they're going," or whatever Piper says.
Your Piper's good.
I got to tell you, I met Piper a few years ago at an autograph signing, and I was talking to him, and there was a little kid that came up and got an autograph before him, and the little kid asked him something, and I didn't hear what that was. And then Piper said, as soon as I go up, he's like, "You know what I wanted to say to him?" He's like, "I wanted to say this." And then Piper lets off this weird string of expletives, but he's whispering them, so I can't totally understand what he was saying. And so I totally didn't get the joke. And I didn't know whether the joke was based on something I would have had to heard, understood what the kid said to understand it. But I laughed as loud as I could because I was like, Piper seems crazy. He's leaning on me and cursing into my ear and at a whisper. I mean, it was hair standing up on the back of my neck. So maybe his essence was blown into my ear at that point.
That's great.
They go to the shantytown. They eat dinner at the shantytown. Piper gets a lot of peas and he eats a biscuit.
Now, and there's a point after they eat dinner where they're having a talk, and Frank talks about, the steel mills being shut down in Detroit, and then Piper says it's hard times, and it instantly made me think of that classic Dusty Rhodes promo that he cut about Ric Flair about hard times and
pork and beans. What is it? I've dined with kings and queens, and I've slept in alleys. Pork and beans.
Yes. So I don't know if that was just a happy coincidence or what, but
I think so. But here's what I wonder about the shantytown: where do they get their electricity for their outdoor TV? And what happens when it rains? Does their outdoor TV just get wet and ruined?
I know. I was actually wondering that too, because later on when the shantytown gets sort of demolished, or the cops come running through it, the next morning they got TV again. And not only that, they've got some sweet recliners there too. They
got some sweet recliners that would be all moldy. Even in LA, it rains occasionally, and they also have
in the movie. Actually,
they're watching Cable 54.
I didn't even get that. Yeah. So they've run power and cable. And they have sweet recliners. I don't know. That shantytown doesn't seem like a bad deal.
Everybody seems real nice at the shantytown. There's another actor at the shantytown who we see again later in the film who plays a drifter in this, and he's the guy who's cleaned up at the end and joins with the aliens. And he was in Back to the Future as well. He's done a million other films. It's George Buckflower. But he's in Back to the Future. He plays two parts in Back to the Future. He plays the bum that when Marty crashes, crazy drunk driver. But he's also Mayor Red Thomas, who's the mayor in 1955 that Goldie Wilson says, "Ooh, one day I'll be mayor." Mm-hmm. So you only see his picture all cleaned up, and I'm not 100% sure that it's him as the actor, but the plot of the movie, he's supposed to be the mayor who, fell from grace and is now sleeping on the park bench.
Yes, that's the way I always took it.
Bob Gale has said that that's the case. So, and his name's Red, and it's funny because Marty says his name towards the end. When he sees him, he goes, "Oh, Red," and so that's like the only connection you have that it's the mayor. But mayor, he didn't clean up Hill Valley.
No,
hard times came his way too. So we see the TV gets interrupted. We see this guy who kind of looks like David Ogden Stiers, I think. Right? The guy from MASH. Yes. And he tells them, that they're watch out, the wealthy are taking stuff, and the politicians, and they want you to be asleep. And so Piper sees that Gilbert, one of the guys, goes down into the church. And Piper checks it out and he's like, you're there till 4 a.m. Doesn't it seem kind of weird that Piper was all up in the guy's business?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it definitely looked like he was looking for trouble.
He was. He's way too suspicious. He's like,
yeah.
Why were you there till 4 a.m? And it's like, the guy's like, what? We're up late. What's wrong? Is that okay with you? It
definitely seemed like there could have been something else there that sort of led him, to think there might have been something going on.
But he sneaks in. He sees that they've got lots of glasses and lots of coffee, and they pipe in the music. He meets the blind preacher who has this weird feel 'em up scene with Piper.
Yes, let me feel your face.
Yeah. He knocks the most obvious fake panel on the wall out, and then he has to put it back in place so we remember it later.
Yeah.
And then he spies on the church, gets some binoculars, sits there, watches the church all night.
For hours.
Yeah.
And you wonder, this guy just came from Denver by way of wherever with his backpack. Was he bird watching? I wondered what he had binoculars for.
That's a very good question. I have no idea. I can't imagine. It is a well-equipped shanty town, so maybe they have a binocular rental area.
If you want to peep or bird watch.
That's right. So he watches the church. He sees that something's not right. Then we get the police raid where they come and they just tear the shanty town up. And then there's a really weird scene where there's this teenager in the alley and he's just cowering, and Piper's like, give me your hand. And Piper leads him to safety. Didn't this feel like that should have been a child?
Oh, definitely. It definitely felt like it should have been a 6 or 7-year-old, not a 16-year-old.
This looked like a guy that could drive a car, and he's cowering, and only the mighty hand of Piper can lead him to safety.
He played it like a 6-year-old.
Yeah, he does. I mean, it's the 6-year-old cowering in the corner, and then being helped out. It's a very weird moment. And Piper takes him to this house where, they take care of him, and there's, kind of a strange guy there that's smoking dope. And so I don't know if there was a bigger, deeper thing that I missed there. But here's my thing. If I'm Piper, this is when I move on. This is when I go to San Diego. Yep. I go to Anaheim. I go out to Las Vegas. There's got to be work in another city. Yeah. At this point, there's no reason to stay. There's nobody wanted to give you work. You got the construction job off the books, and mind you, they may be paying well, but you're still in the shanty town, and they just tore it up, and bad things seem to be happening.
Yes.
But he stays there. He goes in and opens that panel up because the church has been emptied out. But he finds that panel, that they didn't see the obvious panel, that only the secret panel. I mean, the secret panel didn't look very secret. It had a big cut across the top.
Yeah, I mean, short of putting a sign on it that said secret panel, there really wasn't much more they could do to advertise that they had a secret panel.
Yeah. He takes the glasses, the box of glasses. He says, oh, it's only sunglasses, which seemed odd because that seemed to be all they had in there anyway. I don't know why he thought there was something deeper, but he then buries them in the bottom of the trash can, and then he walks away, puts them on, and I like the effect that the glasses let you see in black and white.
I was going to ask you about that because I thought that was an interesting choice, and I think it definitely made everything look creepier, which was probably the intention. And it also made me wonder if that was also done to sort of make the alien effect look better with whatever makeup that they were wearing.
I think you're absolutely right on that.
Mm-hmm.
I also like that it immediately gave you, without having to see the alien, you knew when he put them on, he knew something was wrong with them and took them off immediately. And he knew that what he was seeing was different, so that when he saw the first alien, he didn't say, oh, why is this alien there?
Yeah.
And, is it a Halloween costume? Why is nobody else noticing this? Because your first instinct wouldn't be to take the sunglasses off, because why would you think that would be caused by your sunglasses? So I like that choice.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a well executed moment, and again, you have to go back to John Carpenter's skill as a filmmaker here. I think it was shown to the audience in a very, very precise way.
Yeah, really good. He goes, sees the newsstand, sees the billboards. Everything says obey, marry, and reproduce. Work 8 hours, sleep 8 hours, and play 8 hours was one of the things in the book, in the short story.
Yes,
that they said, which I really liked because that is what we all have to do, except for on the weekends.
Yes.
And so he sees all that. Then he goes into the grocery store. And
actually, before he goes in there at the newsstand, he's got a moment, and we talked about this in the Marine as well, with people treating a wrestler like a regular person.
Yeah.
And
I don't want any trouble from you, incredibly large Roddy Piper.
Exactly.
Why would you say that? You'd just be like, I think I better call the cops or just give this guy the money or something. He's giant.
Yeah, the guy that's buying a paper looks at Piper and says, "You got a problem, buddy?"
Yeah, you want to make something of it? I mean, granted, Piper is not, King Kong Bundy, but he's a very big dude.
Exactly. I love those moments in movies where people respond to wrestlers like they're normal people.
Yeah. Yeah. So he goes to the grocery store and he sees a lot of aliens. And this is where his character, I believe, goes completely insane.
Yes.
He's at the counter and he sees that this lady she's an alien, and he says to her, "You look like your head fell in the cheese dip in 1954. And he's like bullying her for no reason. And granted, I know he now knows that she's an alien, but all he knows is that aliens are hiding as humans and that there are these messages, which he's assuming are done by the aliens. And I think that's a good assumption. But how does he know that this lady is just like, look, I'm just born into this species. Yeah. I don't have a candle in this fight. I'm just here. I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
He's kind of mean to her.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
So he tells her off, and then the clerk, again, is like, "Hey, I don't want any trouble. I'm going to call the cops. You get out of here."
And then he starts picking on the clerk.
Yeah, and Piper starts to do a promo. He's like, "Call the cops!" And he does like he says, "the cops."
Yeah.
He's mocking the guy's accent. I totally expected him to like walk over and grab a coconut, smash it on the guy's head.
And I'm pretty sure he falls down here because he's in full-on Piper rage mode, and he says, "You look like you need a Brazilian plastic surgeon," and then he falls down. And I'm sure that he falls down at that moment because they had no idea what to say next.
Yeah, he falls into some plants, some flowers that are, point of purchase at the counter. Make sure you pick them up on your way out. Then he goes outside. Now, you'd think at this point he'd be like, he'd maybe say, "You know what, I'm starting to arouse some suspicion. Maybe I should think about this for more than 5 minutes." But instead he sees this other lady. It's like, "I'll make fun of her too. You are like pouring perfume on a pig." Which was really funny. That was the first time I had ever heard that joke. I don't know if you remember, but the whole lipstick on a bulldog and a pig and everything was a big thing in the 2008 election.
Yes.
It was like a line that Sarah Palin, I think, said first, and then Obama said it or something like that. There was some back and forth about it. And a lot of people were like, "Wow, I've never heard this expression." And I was like, "Oh my God, Piper told that expression and they live. I know that expression." It's a great line.
Oh, yeah.
He then, now here is where I'm starting to lose Roddy Piper's character. He goes into the bank. The cops come, and the cops try to arrest him, and they're like...
Yeah, and they ask him where he got his glasses from. And again, I had a horrible moment here where I realized that eventually we're probably going to have to talk about this movie. But they ask him where he got the glasses, and he says, "I got them from the Tooth Fairy." And I instantly said, "Oh, no." At some point...
Yeah, and that may be a sequel to this, and we just don't know it because we haven't seen The Rock in the Tooth Fairy.
And then he disables the cops, and we see our first full-fledged wrestling move. He delivers a clothesline here that would make JBL proud.
Yeah, he does. And again, these cops are real nice to him at first. You know, they're like, look, you stumbled onto something. Let's just go talk about it. We'll figure something out. You know, I think he's trying really hard to resist for, you know, I mean, I guess the cops are there. You don't know what they're going to do. But his next move seems crazy to me. He goes into the bank. He says his famous line, would you like to deliver it?
Sure. I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Right. He has no bubblegum.
Which apparently that was a line that Piper brought to set. I guess he had a book of lines that he had written down to eventually cut during promos in the ring. And I guess Carpenter saw that in his book of unused promo lines and inserted it into this scene.
Among the lines that Vince wouldn't let him say.
Yeah.
But he doesn't kick anyone. He instead just shoots everyone. He just shoots as many aliens as he can. And this is when we see the one alien can disappear, which gives us a little bit more to the aliens. We know a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
He goes outside, sees the flying robot, and I think this is an important scene, he sees the human cop and doesn't shoot him.
Yes.
And I think if you're watching and half paying attention, you may have not totally noticed that some people aren't aliens, you know, or that he's not shooting humans. And so they lay it down. They let you know that that's what's going on.
Yeah. It was a good moment.
Then he kidnaps a woman in a parking garage. He kidnaps, you know, white-eyed Kirstie Alley.
Yeah.
I've always liked Meg Foster because she's got the most amazing eyes, and beautiful is a word for them, but they're haunting and unusual.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And she's actually going to be in the new Rob Zombie movie, The Lords of Salem. And I can only imagine, you know, how she's going to be utilized in a movie called Lords of Salem.
Yeah, I can. You're saying she'll be a witch, right?
I would hope so.
Salem witches, not the cigarettes? Okay. Didn't know.
I could see Rob Zombie making a cigarette movie, though.
Yeah. It's all about cigarettes. It could be about cigarette running, which was a big thing in Canada, and it killed Dino Bravo.
Oh, rest in peace.
It could be about that. That could be, you know, because that's a story I want to hear about.
Oh, definitely.
You know, why are cigarettes that important to anyone?
Free.
Man. So we see her, he kidnaps her, he has this creepy conversation about whether she's married, which we then figure out is because he wants to know if there's anyone waiting for her, which she has no husband, but there is a little MacGuffin that she's got two wacky neighbors.
Those neighbors, are those not the best neighbors ever?
I love these neighbors that see something suspicious, but they do nothing about it.
Yeah, you know, they're just watering their plants with their, you know, unbuttoned Hawaiian shirts and glorious mullets. I mean.
Yes. I don't know. So these two guys, I guess, roommates. Maybe they're more than roommates. I don't know. I'd love it if the movie told us more about them. I'd love it if we got a follow-up scene from them, but we don't. We never see them again, right?
No. And which was surprising because I definitely thought we were going to see or hear from them again.
I thought Piper has to either beat them up, you know, they're going to come to her door and he has to beat them up, or maybe, you know, they're calling the cops, but instead Piper goes into her house and the way he leaves her house is through a dramatic fall out the window.
This might be the sickest bump that Piper ever took.
Yes.
I mean,
it's crazy.
She lives on she lives on the second floor, or they're on the second floor at the point where she dispatches him.
Right. And she whacks him in the head, and through the glass he goes down the hill, loses his sunglasses, and has to go get another pair. He has to go into the alley, and then conveniently the trash has just been picked up, so Piper has a great scene where he can climb inside the trash, you know, like compactor.
Yeah.
And then the trash slides out on top of him, you know, like he's trapped in there for a minute, and then it dumps it out onto the street.
Yeah.
He only picks up a couple pairs of glasses, which at first seemed like that's a bad decision, but we find out later the glasses aren't important at all.
Yeah. And also, I got to say that the trash didn't look that trashy either.
No, this is one of those movie
cardboard
trash.
boxes.
Yeah, lots of shredded paper, cardboard boxes. Movie trash.
Yeah. Considering where they were, you'd think that there'd be a
filthy alley. Yeah, there should have been discarded diapers and this should have been foul. Rotten tomatoes but no, it was pretty clean.
Yeah.
Pretty clean. He gets those glasses. That's after he visits Frank at the construction site. I don't know why Frank doesn't turn them in.
Yeah.
I don't understand Frank's motivation for not turning them in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, sure. I mean, at this point, you're seeing reports on TV that this guy is, a mass level murderer. I mean, I don't know what the body count is, but he's gone crazy.
People, cops, and he's like, I don't want to talk to you. Why did you do that? But and then he even comes to him and is like, here's a week's pay. So I'm going to give you a week's pay because I knew you for one night, and then you went crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't even feel like they got along that great, even when they were friendly.
Yeah, sure.
They kind of argued while they're having dinner.
Mm-hmm.
They disagreed a lot. He followed them instead of saying yes. Thank you so much, and it just felt like they didn't have that strong of a bond. I don't know if a lot of time was supposed to have gone by at this point.
Yeah.
What did you feel like? Did you feel like there had been a long time or no?
No. It seemed like this whole movie took place over the course of a handful of days.
I really, really like Frank's purple tank top.
Yes, tucked in.
He's got this awesome purple tank top, and then when they have the big fight later, we see the purple tank top poking through his clothes every now and then, and it always made me smile. Do you want to talk about Frank's name in this, Frank Armitage?
Yeah, he was actually played by Keith David, who I don't think we've actually mentioned yet, and I think this is finally the day or the week where I will no longer confuse Keith David and David Keith.
I hope so, because I have confused the two of them, and I get excited when I see that David Keith is in a movie, and then I'm like, oh, I was thinking Keith David. I like Keith David far more.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you notice, as you said, his character's name is Frank. Mm-hmm. Do they ever say his full name in the movie?
They do.
Okay.
It is said, I'm trying to remember when, but I did hear it said out loud at one point. It may have been when he was checking into the hotel or checking out. It may have been when Gilbert saw him in the hallway of the hotel. But there is a part in the movie. Yeah. I did notice that they said his full name. Mm-hmm. Because for a moment I thought of Fred, what's that guy, Fred Armisen?
Armisen?
Yeah, that guy.
From Saturday Night Live? Yeah.
I thought of that guy when I heard the name. Yeah, the guy, he plays like Obama on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's the same name. And then I'm like, no, it's not. But it is the same name as, a character from H.P. Lovecraft's book, Dunwich Horror.
Yes, and it was also the writing credit that Carpenter used for this movie.
Yeah, so he wrote the movie.
Yeah, but apparently, since it came from so many sources, the short story that was eventually turned into a story in a comic book, and apparently input from the cast, Carpenter decided not to take a John Carpenter credit here and use the Frank Armitage name, which is really interesting considering that eventually that turns out to be a character in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. It almost makes you think that Keith David wrote the movie.
Exactly. And Keith David had worked with Carpenter a few years prior on the movie The Thing.
Yeah, Keith David also, I knew him very well as a character on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
You know what? I learned that he was on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I remember this because I sent you a YouTube clip of Mr. Rogers playing Donkey Kong, and then the service technician comes over and opens the Donkey Kong machine, and you said to me, you're like, check out that guy's voice. Doesn't that sound like... And I'm like, yeah, no, that's Keith David. He was on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for like 5 years.
Yeah, that was
crazy. That's where he got his start, I think.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is that's one of those things where, as a kid, I watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, whenever it was on. I mean, I have memories of watching that show. But it was one of those things where you just didn't make that connection when you got older.
Right.
Like for whatever reason, it had been years since I had seen Mr. Rogers when I saw him in his first movie, or the first movie I saw him in, and just didn't make that connection. So my mind was definitely blown.
One of the things about years ago was you didn't have IMDb and stuff. So if it wasn't the lead actor, it was hard to find out what movies they were in. And so you'd see people, and that's how you kind of remembered people. I think it was easier almost to remember somebody's body of work because you had to. There was no place to look for it. And so you kind of had to, mentally be like, oh, that's the guy from whatever and whatever and whatever.
Yeah. It is interesting that, we're not that many years into having that kind of information right at our fingertips.
Right, but you can't. I couldn't imagine not having it.
No, you can't go back.
Yeah. Oh boy. So they have the fight in the alley. What do you have to say about this? Do you have any?
What?
To me, this was like thrown in for the wrestling fans. And I've heard the stories about how it was supposed to be a short fight and they choreographed a bigger fight and that Carpenter liked it. I don't know how true that really is. I think it may be one of those stories that comes up during press, where you're getting ready for the movie and guys kind of make up stories and then they stick to them forever. But wow, this fight's crazy.
It clocks in at about 5 minutes, and I got to say, I know this is pretty much what the movie's remembered for, but it's a really, really good fight. The coverage in it is great, and the punches look great. There's some wrestling moves thrown in.
There's a suplex. There's a sidewalk slam. There's a couple clotheslines. There might be a body slam in there.
Yeah.
No, put those glasses on.
No, it's a stubbornness thing at that point. He just doesn't want to put them on, and I think that it's a great moment, and I think this is another one of those Carpenter things too. I think Carpenter has moments in his films that could only happen in a Carpenter film, and I think this is one of those.
Well, I got to tell you, when I saw it, this was not my kind of movie at the age where I saw this. I was younger than this movie was aimed at.
Sure.
And so I wasn't crazy about it until this scene. This fight, to me was like, oh my God, they got Roddy Piper having a wrestling match in the middle of the movie. I'm sold. I love it.
Yeah.
So then they get a hotel room together.
Yes, and we see Piper shirtless again.
Yeah,
which is
a little weird. I really, as I was watching it, was like, why are they getting a hotel room? And then after they leave the hotel room, I was like, why do they get a hotel room?
Yeah, just to clean up, I guess. But it's so funny that when we watched The Marine last week, I don't remember one sequence where John Cena was in anything less than a T-shirt.
Right.
And here we've got
covered up.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for the effect of not having him look super buff and, look more like an everyman, but you want to show that you have this guy with a really nice physique. He's got a better physique here than he did most of the time when he wrestled.
Oh, yeah.
And so maybe that was part of the point of keeping him clothed for most of it. But yeah, they go in, they get a hotel room. They then leave the hotel room. They run into Gilbert in the hallway. He's all right. He survived the shantytown dust up. He says, come to the resistance meeting. They go there, and that's where they get contact lenses, which really spoils a lot of the movie to me.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I know the reason behind it. They didn't know, when you're making a movie, I doubt you know what's going to hit with people. But the glasses are so iconic for this movie that once they take them off, it's a bummer. And I know what they wanted probably was to be able to see the acting in the actor's eyes.
Sure.
But I'm bummed out when they don't have the glasses on now.
Yeah, I you know what? I also thought it made the end of the movie easier for them to probably shoot because they didn't have to worry about glasses continuity, cutting from black and white footage to the actors with or without sunglasses.
Right, and it probably would have caused some people in the audience to say, why aren't they realizing that these two guys have sunglasses in the tunnel when they're there at the end of the movie?
That's a good point as well.
So we get there pretty quick. I mean, there's the fight. There's they meet up with Holly again. He's like, oh, they sort of make amends, which I was surprised about, but I guess he's been through a lot. I guess he'd take any friend he has at this point. And we then see the watch malfunction. There's a hole. They go down into it. Then we see the bad guys, the alien soldiers, holding the PKE meter from Ghostbusters, which I thought was great, and talking about the A-Team. Did you catch this line?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, they had to mess with the A-team. And I mean, obviously, that's a reference to them being the top team, but it also was during a time where that TV show was very popular, was still on the air for a little while longer at this point. So I totally think that this was also, they were like, hey, let's throw that in. Let's throw in a reference to the A-team.
Do you think also that was a little bit of a rib on Piper, who to this day still holds some kind of grudge against Mr. T for some crazy reason?
It is true. Piper, to this day, anytime he's on television, he starts talking about Mr. T. And I love Mr. T. I think Mr. T's the best. But there is a huge amount of the WWE audience that is so young that they have no idea who Mr. T is. And they don't understand why this crazy man is rambling on and on about a match he had in 1986.
Yes.
He's still talking about the boxing match at WrestleMania 2 that everybody wanted to forget. Even Mr. T said that it was like the Three Stooges would have been proud with that match, and it was forgettable. It's very surprising that Piper is still holding kayfabe on that.
Yeah, he's keeping it real.
What do you think about George Buck Flower showing up at the end here, all cleaned up, talking to them with his little twang in his tuxedo after they see the big gala dinner?
I'll tell you, he cleans up nice, and he definitely serves a purpose because he gives us a lot of exposition here.
It does.
He definitely gets us up to speed on things. But you got to wonder why they decided to give him this offer, and it really made me start to question a lot of how this society works in terms of where is the money coming from, and are they just printing it up?
Right. Well, there's also, they show their space travel, and he's like,
yes,
they really got their act together. And it's at this point that I start saying, why wouldn't you join them? What is the downside? This is not like the Matrix where they've got you plugged in and your body's in like a big test tube.
Yeah.
And, it's being used as a battery or whatever was going on in that movie. This movie, you're allowed to live your regular life with more money. The life you've known your whole life with more money. I think they say 30% more, this year than last year.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think, and the only thing is that there was a line at some point in the movie where they say that the planet's slowly being, formatted for the aliens or whatever.
Yeah, but
who don't seem to need to have the planet formatted because they're walking around it already. But yeah, this is where if I started thinking too hard, I would have problems with the movie.
Well, this is where I do have some problems with this movie. And again, I love this movie, but at this moment, this movie feels wrong. It feels very small that this whole conspiracy is being run in this tunnel. There's this little, like a dining hall down there. And these two guys are going to go to the rooftop and shoot the signal, which is just a dish on the roof. And it just feels like this should have been a story about aliens taking over LA or taking over a small town. But aliens taking over what I guess we're told is the whole Earth. This just felt like there was no global scope to this. This felt like this was just being done in this small area, and it didn't feel connected to anything else.
Definitely. And you have to wonder too. I mean, it was Cable 54, so it wasn't like this was a global station.
No. I mean, and it didn't even seem like that good of a station, to be quite honest. And it was a station that they were able to tap into. So I mean, the aliens really didn't seem to have their stuff together.
Yeah, they weren't broadcasting across the entire spectrum.
I didn't feel that they were. I didn't, But anyway, we get the big ending. There's not too much that I have to say about it. I'm surprised how Frank gets it.
Off-screen, pretty much.
Sort of off-screen. She puts the gun up to his head. We do hear the gunshot. I missed it this viewing, and I backed it up because I missed his death scene. It's real quick. And then she goes up, and Piper then has to shoot her because she's so dumb she doesn't see him pulling a gun out of the wristband of his shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got a gun on him. She's looking at him, and he's really obviously fidgeting with this gun.
Yeah.
Flips the bird at her, flips the bird at the aliens, shoots the thing, shoots her. Boom, boom, boom. Everything's done except for a really cool montage.
Yes.
And I also will say that watching it this time, I, for a moment, was like, you know what? It's not, it's if it is definitely the case that his character is dead, but it's something that you could miss. And I'm not totally sure that every time I've seen this, I thought his character died at the end.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, it's so quick, that ending, that you almost miss it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
We get the alien news reporters, Alien Siskel and Ebert. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to determine if this is my favorite Siskel and Ebert moment from a movie, and it might be if Godzilla didn't exist,
right?
With Mayor Ebert, but it's funny how filmmakers, especially during this time period, up until the late '90s, really like to sort of give it to Siskel and Ebert if they didn't like their movies. Like
today, there's really no equivalent.
Face,
they were it. They were the face of critics. And so, yeah, there's some jabs at them because they're aliens and they're criticizing John Carpenter. And who was the other director? George Romero?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we see that. We see the sex scene, which made me wonder a little bit about what that would produce when the alien is making it with the chick.
Yeah.
Top off. I don't know what would come from that. Not sure. And the aliens told us earlier that we look ugly to them, so I'm not sure why this alien's with the woman. I don't know. That kind of confuses me, but okay, it doesn't matter. We get the scene in the bar with the guy who turns into an alien, and everybody looks at him, and then we roll credits.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really effective ending in the sense that it shows that everybody can see things now, and it basically lets you know that things will never be the same. And I always like when movies sort of end with that kind of something big is going to happen. And unfortunately, we never see that. But
I kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly. I do too.
Well, again, we were talking about Piper's career at this time. So this was he was one of the biggest wrestlers, at least the biggest villain in wrestling at this time. In 1985, 86, he was the top guy. 87, he retired. This was the pay-per-view where Andre the Giant fought Hulk Hogan. Mm-hmm. And so he retired, fought Adrian Adonis, and we thought we'd never see him again in a wrestling ring. He did Hell Comes to Frogtown. He did some TV movies. He did Buy and Sell with Sherman Hemsley. And then he came back in 1989. So he was gone for 2 years from wrestling. Yeah. Came back, did some Piper's Pit, slowly transitioned his way back into the ring. And then he retired 2 more times after this. He retired at a TNA, at least 2 more. There may have been other matches where he told people it was his last match, and I don't remember them. But he retired at a TNA match in 2008, and then like the next spring, he retired at WrestleMania 25 in that tag team match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Jimmy Snuka against Chris Jericho.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to remember where the match versus Goldust at WrestleMania fit in.
Yeah, no, that would be after this. Yeah. So
but
10 years.
It was before he went to WCW, though, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Because after this, he had the run with Goldust where. And Piper has a lot of things when you look back at them that are really offensive, that he was the good guy. He was mad at Goldust because Goldust was effeminate. That was his whole feud with him. And then he wrestled Bad News Brown and he painted himself half black.
Yes.
Even at the time, I didn't get it. I don't understand the point. It's like that way everybody can cheer for me. No, that way no one will cheer, but they did cheer. People still cheered. But he was involved in quite a few angles, then left, then went to Alcatraz to fight Hulk Hogan in WCW.
They had a series of pay-per-views where I remember being continually frustrated, me and my brother sitting there watching those WCW pay-per-views and Piper beating Hogan, but somehow still not becoming champ for some convoluted reason. WCW was great at frustrating you. If they were good at anything, that's what they were good at.
All right, I got a few more things before we wrap up, but what was going on in wrestling at this time? Let's get just the champs out so everybody can...
All right, this was actually a pretty big month for wrestling from a historical standpoint. It's November 1988. Your champ was your WWF champ was Randy Macho Man Savage. Awesome. Who won the belt at WrestleMania 4 versus Ted DiBiase in that tournament. And he would hold that belt that title until the next WrestleMania when he dropped it to Hulk Hogan.
Because the Mega Powers exploded.
Yes. Your WWF IC champ was the Ultimate Warrior, who, went on to eventually win the main title.
And by the way, I was just going to say, when the Mega Powers exploded, WrestleMania 5 in Atlantic City, Piper made his first return appearance, which was just a solo appearance where he showed up and sprayed Morton Downey Jr. with a fire extinguisher and beat up Brother Love. So he was gone. That was 1 year after this.
Okay, yeah. The World Tag Team Champs in WWF were Demolition, who have had the longest tag team reign that at this point I can't see it ever being beat, of 478 days.
They were phenomenal. And the only way it'll be beat now is if they just forget about the tag team. If they're just like, it's one of those things like Moolah had that, where she had the title for like 30 years because they forgot about it for like 8 years. That's what they could do. Where just R-Truth and Kofi just have it for, the next, 2 years. And then they're like, oh my God, those guys have the tag title. And they're like, yeah, we got them at our house. We just stopped bringing them in when you stopped putting us up in matches for it.
I can definitely see that happening.
That could very well be. I do have one email. Do you got any emails?
Yeah. Actually, just real quick.
Sure.
This was actually back in the days when there was still competition for the WWF. And the NWA champ at this time was Ric Flair. And something pretty historic happened later on in the month of November. On the 21st of November, the WCW joined the NWA. And this was the start of Ted Turner's WCW.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. So this was a really big time in wrestling. Piper was away for a lot of things were going on when he was out there, trying to get Keith David to put the glasses on.
Yeah.
I have an email. This is from, and I love this name. I don't know if it's supposed to be read this way, but it says Show Me Greg, and I'm just going to say, Show Me Greg. Ding. Total Family Feud name. Excited to hear you're doing They Live, since I find it to be the ultimate wrestling movie. I mostly remember the 20-minute fight scene with Roddy Piper and Keith David. Felt like a wrestling match. Suplexes, headbutts, and body slams. I have not seen the film in a long time and wonder if it holds up. And I think it does. I think it feels very 80s, but it does hold up.
Oh, definitely.
What do you have?
I actually do have an email here from, my name is I guess as creative. Feel free to use creative names in the future, guys. But Jake from New York wrote in, and he says, they live, more like they die. Piper gives Arnold and Sly a run for their money with the body count in this movie. And I don't even think you could count in this movie how many people Piper takes out. But
most down people.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely has a high body count. I think you could probably stack it up next to Commando or First Blood Part 2, definitely.
Let me say, we didn't touch on the title, which is kind of an odd title. The short story was called 8 o'clock in the morning, I believe.
Yes.
And the They Live is seen on the wall in the church. It says, they live, we sleep. And then after the shanty towns, paved over, the cops or government or aliens or whatever paint over they live, we sleep in the church. Did you catch that?
No, actually I didn't.
Piper goes back in and it's painted over. So,
okay.
They didn't want anybody to read the graffiti. That graffiti, that might let people know that they live.
Yeah, somebody might take that seriously.
That's right. If you want to email us, you can. Tell us about the next movie we're going to be watching, which will be No Holds Barred. We've had a couple good movies here, and now we're going to be watching something really goofy. So if you've seen No Holds Barred, and this is the one with Hulk Hogan and Zeus, not the very old movie by that name, which I hope we do one day, there is another wrestling movie called No Holds Barred. But if you have any memories or a review of that, write to us at camelclutchcinema@gmail.com. And I have one more thing I want to share.
All right.
I went onto the IMDb message board, and I was just reading through them, and I found one thread that I thought was worth bringing up and reading to you. And maybe I can look every time and see if there's a good thread, but this one's a classic.
Okay.
It's titled, One Easy Way to Make Him Put on the Glasses. It says, I know the fight was there for a reason, but it went on way too long. I watched it a long time ago, and I'm streaming it on Netflix now. I would have wore the glasses and said, holy poop, I found the X-ray glasses that let you see right through woman's clothes. He would have been fighting with him to let him wear the glasses. P.S. There are a lot of things that used to represent things with a different hidden meaning, but I suggest that people watching it for the first time will enjoy it more if they watch it without looking for hidden meanings. Now, there's no punctuation in this, and he uses stuff like the word through. He uses homonyms, he uses the wrong word, but that's his post, and somebody wrote, I couldn't stop laughing at the symbolism of Roddy Piper forcing Keith David to put on a pair of sunglasses. The overtly racist overtones cracked me up. Then this guy says, I didn't pick up any racist under overtones. If anything, I thought their relationship and the ensuing fight for dominance had some obvious homosexual overtones to it. Then this guy says, come on, it starts with them checking each other out at work. The blonde lead shirtless guy tussling his hair. Next, the other lead leaves his wife and kids to share a hotel room with the blonde dude. Blonde dude murders potential love interest. Shame their glasses couldn't make them see their true love for one another.
Oh, goodness. It's always got to go down that road, doesn't it?
It does. That's how the IMDb message board works. All right, one final question for you.
Okay.
Did you tap out to this film?
No, there's unthinkable. Of course not. I couldn't. I don't think I could ever tap out to this film.
Me neither. I did not tap out. This was one that I highly recommend. Well, that's it for this time. So next time, no holds barred. You can find us on the internet in a bunch of different places, but I'll suggest you go to adventureclubpodcast.com and you'll find, links for everything else on there. And you can follow us on Twitter. Craig, you want to throw out your Twitter handle?
It is Mr. Craig Cohen with an MR.
All right, very good. I'm Guy Hutchinson on Twitter, and you can catch me on other things. Just look for Guy Hutchinson, and I'm probably there. It's either me or it's the dead guy from the 1940s. Well, that's it for this time. We will talk to you next time when we have no ring, no ref, and no holds barred.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you have to get the last word in? Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh, stop it! Goodbye.
So you want to wrestle, huh? You're too little. We got ushers bigger than you. Leave. I got to take a crack.
Don't you see? Your skills plus my skills in the ring. Tag team.
Highway Patrol, this is John Triton.
What are you doing up there?
Staying away from you.
No more rhymes now, I mean it.
Anybody want a peanut? What's that smell?
Down goes Jimmy King. Oh my God, a four-post massacre. No one can survive this. This isn't even a pay-per-view.